Welcome, everybody, to the Bassfug Podcast. Today, we have a technical difficulties episode, but I think we got everything under control. Today, we are with Jkuch, a.k.a. Joshua Kucharzak.
Yep.
Sorry about that, Josh. Poor Josh probably thinks I'm a crackhead because for the last 15 minutes, I've been trying to get the sound to work. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Thank you for taking time out of your day for this. I totally appreciate it.
No, I appreciate having me on here. Yeah, definitely excited.
Okay, the first thing I want to jump into is going through your discography. Your sound has definitely changed. One of my favorite tracks by you is The Cave. It's this kind of, I don't want to say old school, but I guess maybe it is old school because it's about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, when it came out. It's kind of a hard dubstep track, But now you're doing more kind of vibey, I guess they call it wave sort of style. I'm wondering if you could touch on why you changed. Was it out of some type of emotional fulfillment thing, or was it just out of necessity as an artist to change?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always been like trying out different things. So I guess as far as like that song in particular, it just was kind of a phase that I was going through. Kind of the break it down is when I first started making music, I started with like making electro house or just house music in general. And I just kind of went through different genres in the EDM world, just kind of seeing, I guess just testing things out, obviously. So if you go over the years, you'll always find maybe there's 4 or 5 songs in a particular genre, and then all of a sudden I'll swap it up and then try something different, To me, that was just, it was good for me to kind of practice and, I guess it helped me out for future releases as well. For example, because I've made, these different types of genres at the beginning, now I have like this extra arsenal of skills or different styles that I can kind of implement and combine together. So that's kind of the idea with the new music, where I've got the sound design knowledge from making dubstep years ago. Now I kind of, can include that in the new songs while keeping them melodic. So it's just kind of testing things out. I'm always trying new genres and just seeing where I can go with it. But, you can always kind of get the same idea throughout all of them. I think you can still hear kind of a similarity through, all of my music, hopefully at least, but yeah.
Let's talk about, you said you started with electro house. Can you tell us about how you got into music and I guess what your first music memory was? In the show, I asked this to almost everybody that comes on. I forgot the last 2 interviews. Sorry about that, folks. But, just so we have kind of a biographical idea of where you're coming from. Because I think a lot of people, they'll see you with, was it 500,000 to 1 million plays on some of your tracks on online. You got a lot of plays and you seem to be playing all these festivals and stuff. And as someone who's starting producing music, they might think, oh, that's not attainable. Like, I can't do that. And I think a lot of the times when I ask this question to producers, their story is interesting, but also like a tangible thing, I was wondering if you could just kind of go from the beginning and maybe talk about your earliest music memory to when you first started to produce.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's probably the same for a lot of people, especially with other producers I've talked to. It's kind of the same sort of idea. But for me, I started wanting to make electronic music in 2013. And that was around the time I was listening to people like deadmau5 and Skrillex and people like Madeon. So there was a lot of really talented producers, and they're still around, obviously, but they were making these cool songs, and I was like, I want to know how they make that. And since I was listening to them and they're so new and like unusual, dubstep was just kind of getting big, probably 2011 or so, and that's when I was really listening to it. It's like, I really want to know how they make that sort of music. And that might be the same exact thing, a lot of producers kind of go through. So that's just kind of how I started. And going from there, I think probably my biggest inspiration was Deadmau5. So I was almost replicating his style of music, which is like progressive house and, some melodic or some, kind of dirty house, whatever. So I ended up, getting a laptop I think I was using for school at the time and, tried different softwares out, and I completely forgot what the first software I used or first DAW that I used, but it was just a free download one because it was just like online. I just typed in on Google, it's like free, production softwares, whatever. And, I just came across this one and, it was very limited, but I was able to use it and just kind of mess around with. And, my friend introduced me, Fruity Loops, which is actually what I still currently use. And, he ended up giving me a copy of his, and just from there, I just, took off from, just messing around and experimenting. I was kind of opened me up to new things. So, I guess still keeping the inspiration of Deadmau5 and kind of looking up YouTube tutorials online. That's primarily what I did for the first 2 years, actually, was just looking up YouTube videos, I remember the first song I made in FL Studio was actually right after I looked up a video how to make a Deadmau5 5 chord sound, and someone happened to have one for FL Studio, so I just kind of replicated that and learned how to do it, and I guess kind of copy someone else at first because it's like, well, that's the sound I want, so that's exactly what I did. Was whoever was inspiring me, I was just like, I want to make their style of music. So for 2013 was all house music. And there's a few other, producers that I was inspired by, but that entire year was all house music, which is still really nice. And, when it comes to even my newer music, you'll still kind of hear that sort of, I guess some of the similarities to that. But, I guess everyone can kind of get that same sort of start. But for me, it was primarily watching YouTube videos and like tutorials and just kind of messing around with stuff and experimenting with different genres.
Were you always into music? Like when you were a child, like did you gravitate towards like instruments, or did someone in your family or friend group or whatever kind of influence you in some way? Because you said Skrillex and Deadmau5 around 2013 influenced you, but in your early childhood development, was there something there?
Yeah. So as far as music in general, like my father's always been really big into multiple genres of music, rock music from the 80s. I kind of grew up listening to almost everything, but I've always been interested in playing guitar when I was younger. Like, in fact, when I was 8 years old, I got an electric guitar for Christmas and was messing around with that. And I remember,
wow, that's really
Slash.
early.
Yeah, really, really early. I mean, I never like got into it and really got, great at it, but, I was always kind of experimenting with that. And even when I was younger, I took piano lessons for a little while, but the problem is I never kind of retained that. I guess the thing that I retained was the, trying things out side of my brain, whereas the actual music theory and actually the knowledge behind it, I did not retain at all. And I have almost no music theory to my name right now at all. It's all just by kind of testing things out and just, trying things out and seeing how it goes. So yes, I guess, kind of growing up just, and like I was going to say is, I was inspired by Slash, who's like a guitarist, for Guns N' Roses. And that was like when I was 8 years old, I was like, I want to be Slash. And I got the guitar exactly like he had. He had a Les Paul guitar and I got the sunburst color one exactly like his, so that's sort of idea of like not necessarily becoming someone, but just trying to see how they do it or whatever. That's always kind of been around in my mind. And even before that, I've always been into art and drawing. So I guess creativity has always been, definitely relevant in my life. So I guess it was easy for me to move into electronic music because I've always been, creative minded or, interested in trying things and whatnot. So, yeah.
Do you think that maybe, I don't know if you agree or not, but, I was the same when I was a kid. I had Use Your Illusions on tape And, I was really into Guns N' Roses and Metallica and all that stuff. Now, I think post Skrillex, I feel like Skrillex is the Kurt Cobain of that generation. And now it's like EDM as a blanket term, umbrella term. It seems to be the new rock. Like you have these big festivals like EDC and all that. And it seems like rock and roll is kind of this weird relic of the past, and electronic music is sort of the future. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree in a lot of ways, I guess, as far as, the ways it compares definitely, like, as far as rock goes. I mean, you have soft rock and you can get all the way up to death metal or like, screamo, right? So, I think that's sort of the same idea with EDM. You can be really as far on either side, and you can get, like you were saying, huge festivals with people. And I think definitely EDM is a lot larger. I mean, I feel like you can pull a very large audience for their festivals when it comes to, what they set up and the amount of money they put into the festivals for speakers and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, definitely. I would definitely agree as far as that goes. It's tricky to say because, there's other genres that are out there that, I guess can't really compare, but, I guess pop music in general and rap and everything have their own sort of category. But, I agree. Like, I think EDM should or will get as big as rock, I guess. I'm not too sure, honestly. It's definitely going all over the place. So not really sure where it's going to go, but
it's funny because in the 90s, I used to make electronic music, and all my friends and just everybody I told, they were like, oh, that's cute. You're using your computer to make music and all that, but it's not real music. It's not drums. It's not a guitar. But now it seems like even, we'll say, regular music, acoustic music is basically electronic music now. You get people overdubbing samples on the drum tracks. Everything is in the box now, and it's kind of it's interesting to see how it's just all evolved,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, and I guess that's kind of the nice combination now where you can, you can almost combine genres now because, for example, even if you wanted to make rock music now, a lot of the times, especially in your DAW, you can like replicate those real sounds in the software, or, you can get patches or whatever to, make guitar sounds. So a lot of people don't even need instruments really. They can make it all happen inside their software, which is pretty cool.
You can get entire orchestras, with the
exactly. And that's what I've been doing quite a bit as well. As far as that goes, definitely replicating, or even, since I don't have a violin, I can make one in the software, or at least have one that was already recorded and manipulated, or whatever.
What are you using for production? What you said you're using FL Studio, but for these violin samples, are you using a particular VST or sample pack, or how does that work?
Yeah, so a lot of the times, actually, there's a lot of different things people can use as far as getting those sounds. But honestly, I just went online and I was looking around for sound fonts to use, and FL Studio has this basic sound font that you can use to where you just drag them in and you can literally just play them from there and adjust them and adjust the timing and everything. And literally what I did was I just went online, looked up orchestral sound font packs and just kind of went through them. So it's not just violins. It has, everything that you could use to build an orchestra basically on your computer. But what I'll end up doing is, because it may sound like something else someone else has used, or for example, it's not perfect, right? So it's not going to sound like an actual violin depending on the notes you play or depending on what you're trying to do. So a lot of the times I have to cover it up with echo and reverb, or either I'll put it in the background. So I guess you'll never hear me use it in the forefront of things, just because I don't want it to sound too electronic, because it is difficult to, obviously you can't make it sound exactly like a true violin. at least for me yet. You know, there's other tools that are out there to make that easier, but I haven't really made that step to get a more realistic sound out of it. But what I have so far is kind of just the stock plugins in FL Studio that allow me to use that. And so far it's been pretty helpful. And, you know, I've been able to use that quite a bit. So if you listen to a lot of my songs, you'll hear I use, you know, violins, and they'll more than likely be in the background of the song, just as extra layering.
It's a very Deadmau5 thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
For sure.
Can you talk a bit about sound design?
Yeah, absolutely.
Process?
Yeah. I guess as far as the sounds that I make, or at least most of my fans, they've been talking about most of my chord sound design or bass sound design. Almost everything I will make in this plugin called Harmor. And it's actually a stock FL Studio plugin, where a lot of people end up using things like Serum and Massive. I kind of stayed away from those for some reason. I've always been drawn to using Harmor, and I guess the reason why is everything's kind of right in front of you, whereas Serum, there's so many different tabs and different things like that you got to open up, and for some reason I've just stayed comfortable with Harmor. But that may be also why some of my sounds are unique sounding, because not everyone uses Harmor. A lot of people will jump to using Serum or Massive and believe that's going to be the, you know, best way to get the sounds they want. But I guess the limitations that Harmor has allows me to kind of creatively think and try and figure different ways around what I usually could do in Serum. But yeah, I mean, I guess with especially my new music, the way I think about a lot of my sound design is it's primarily going to be simple sounds, and then a lot of post-processing. So going in afterward and adding different effects to try and, you know, either make it sound metallic or, you know, just change it up completely. So when it does come to my sound design in general, even looking back on some older projects, they're usually very simple. For example, you know, it could be a square wave or a saw wave, you know, in almost any plugin, and you can make a pluck out of it, or you can add some voices to it to make it detuned, you know, like a super saw almost. There's all sorts of things you can do, but you know, I usually just take that basic concept, and from there I'll add other effects onto it. For example, like you know, delay plugins, chorus plugins, anything like that, just to kind of help, I guess, season it or add flavor to it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just the way that I do it is what makes it unique, because the sounds are really not that unique. You know, it really depends on what it is, but there's all sorts of different kind of steps that I go through as far as, why I'll put in a certain plugin or a certain effect plugin. Especially for like the metallic sounds, what I'll end up doing is taking a delay plugin and make it a very short timing. You know, and the shorter the timing on a delay plugin, the more metallic it's going to sound.
Yeah.
And just kind of playing around with that, you know, you can make a very simple sound, and then all of a sudden now it's like, you know, almost like a machine sound. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but
yeah. The digital delay is Aphex Twin does a lot of that in his old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's really, I think he had the Ibanez digital delay pedal. I think that's the one he was using.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was popular.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also a big inspiration too. Now that you said that, I think he probably would have been the first inspiration as far as electronic music in general for me. But I listened to him when I was 12 years old, which is actually kind of crazy for a 12-year-old kid to stumble upon Aphex Twin. But, you know, for him especially, I didn't acknowledge really what he was making. I didn't really know it was electronic music for some reason either. I didn't wrap my head around it, or I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I only started investigating into actual electronic music when I started listening to Deadmau5.
Yeah.
I guess that was the first time, but I definitely listened to, you know, Aphex Twin quite a bit.
Well, his Come to Daddy and Window Licker were on regular rotation on MTV for a while, so you were bound to see that, I think, at some point.
Possibly, but I think I found him only through YouTube. I don't even know if I had seen him through MTV. Yeah.
Oh wow. Maybe I'm dating myself here.
No, not at all. I mean, it's, I think I was definitely late to Aphex Twin. Let's just say that, because, when I was 12, that would have been, I think, 2009. Okay. I might have been even younger, I don't know exactly, but I think 2009 was when I found him. And, he's already, he was very popular in the 90s, late 90s, and I think he started fading out a little bit early 2000s. But obviously he's a legend, but I didn't find him until 2009, which is pretty late.
Yeah, there was a resurgence in Aphex Twin, I think, when Skrillex infamously posted the song Flim on Facebook, and someone in the comments section wrote, "Where's the drop?" And I think what happened was a lot of the Aphex Twin snobs were using that as a meme. And then, then on Reddit, We Are the Music Makers sort of kind of popularized him. And then now he's kind of a god again. So,
right.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you something. You played a show, Sly Fest, and it was on VRChat. Mm-hmm. What is it like playing a show in virtual reality? Did you have like a headset on or something like that, or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I didn't have the, the actual goggles and the, controls and everything. I actually ended up just playing it on the PC with a keyboard and mouse. That's kind of how I was controlling everything. What's nice with VRChat is people don't necessarily have to have an actual VR setup to use it. So anyone that has a computer can get on it. And that's actually kind of why I like it. Because, I think as far as getting the VR set and making sure it works for me, it's, pretty pricey, and just to get on the VR chat, and I don't really go on it that often. But anyways, as far as actually, playing the event and all that, honestly was crazy because of course with COVID and everything, we can't really have the same shows or anything like we used to.
Yeah.
But it's super odd because when I went into VRChat and played the show, I got the exact same feeling that I got from playing an actual live event.
Really?
And it's hard to wrap your head around it until you kind of experience that. But even with keyboard and mouse, I was getting that same sort of feeling. And I guess to put it in perspective is, imagine, when you're in the game or you're around other people, you're hearing their microphones, right? But if you have headphones on, it's also stereo. So you're going to hear if people are to your left or to your right. Mm. And when you're looking around in the game, you can almost tell, as they are further away from you, the volume also decreased with them.
Oh, wow.
So you actually get a sense of space when you're in the game and kind of seeing them move around. And especially if they have their own VR setup, you see their arms moving around, which is really odd,
Yeah.
I had a conversation with someone, I think after my set, and they even make the same hand gestures that they would do in real life.
Oh, wow.
So your brain is almost, it tricks you a little bit when you're in VR, when you're in VRChat, because, just having those conversations with the people, you're like, I don't know, this feels real to me, especially they're making the hand gestures. They're to my left and I can hear them on my left side. So it's like a really weird sort of setup. I couldn't imagine actually having a VR headset on, but, for that experience, even just on the, computer was crazy because, usually what I find at my live shows is, even before I get on, I talk to a few people, and then when I'm on stage, I'm looking out and I see the people out in the crowd, which is, awesome. And in VRChat, I got that same sort of idea. I'm like on this stage and I'm behind this made up little, DJ mixer here, and I'm looking out and I'm seeing these, little characters out on the stage, and I'm like, wow, this is like this feels like real life. And my set's going off and everything, and then after my set I go out and start talking to people, and they're like congratulating me, and they're like, oh, that was a sick set, that was awesome. And just that sort of same feeling I get even after it, after a show, is just really unusual, but it's awesome. I'm definitely seeing a future with that sort of live event, or virtual event, for almost anything. Cause, like I said, you almost have to be there to really believe it. But, I don't think I could ever get that same experience for another virtual fest. Say it was just like a Twitch stream, or say it was even a Minecraft festival or whatever. The VRChat thing was definitely unique. I just couldn't even believe it. So
what's the difference between a Minecraft festival and a VR festival?
So if you're not familiar with the Minecraft festivals, they've been doing that for the last few years, even before COVID. But the thing is that's different with Minecraft, right? The nice thing with Minecraft is you can get more people and you can actually have them attend. And it's the same concept, you have the stage and you can have people go in and be able to see it. But the thing is there's no microphone setups. It's just you're texting or you're just typing. So you don't really get that same idea where, your characters in the game and you hear everyone around you and you almost, you won't get that same sort of sense of space, I guess. Especially, at least with VRChat, you actually can hear people's voices, and you can see them moving, and they can make the hand gestures and whatever, is closest to real life as possible. I guess that's kind of why I would prefer VRChat for that versus Minecraft. And both are games, but I think the nice thing with VRChat is its sole purpose is just for communicating with people, or at least, socializing with people. Whereas Minecraft is, obviously a game for building and whatever. But the neat thing with VRChat is I think it's built just for communicating. So I guess that aspect already is really helpful for people that want to go see a show. They can go in and talk to their friends or even bring their friends in there, say they live across the country or whatever.
Yeah.
That sort of idea and actually being able to have that communication without having to be on a separate call either, right? You could be in the game and everyone's able to talk at the same time or whatever.
And that spatial awareness, it simulates like a bar or a theater or something.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Because when you go up on stage, there's always that, 2 minutes of silence. Sometimes, I guess if you're back to back, but generally you hear people in the crowd and it kind of gets you excited a little bit, so I could see how that could replicate the experience. You played a few live festivals. What's that like?
It's been amazing, honestly. I've unfortunately this year was like probably one of the bigger years I've had as far as playing events. I've played events here and there over the years. I haven't really gotten a good hang of it because I've been on my own for a while. I don't really have management. I don't really have contact with booking agencies or anything. So I've been kind of doing all that on my own. But most of my shows I've had where people just reach out to me, and then they offer, hey, we'll pay you to come out here if you want to come play an event. But, this year especially I ended up having like a 2-day mini tour. It was supposed to be 3 places, but they ended up canceling one. That just shows how, I don't really have booking agencies, but I ended up playing, an event in, Virginia and North Carolina in the U.S. And, they were both at college towns, nothing too crazy, but the turnout was great. So we had a lot of people show up. And they've always, I guess for me, they've always been sort of like bar setups. They haven't necessarily been full on clubs. I don't think I've played like the only big event that I've really played was, I played this festival last year, at a stereo music festival in Florida. And that was the first time I actually played on a full size stage. I mean, a massive stage. And, that was incredible. That was probably the first, real event for me, I would say. And to me, that was amazing. And that's that sort of feeling you get as you're getting up on stage and you're looking out and you're seeing people that are out, like, there's a certain feeling you get, like you were saying, when it's silent, you get really excited as you're getting up, people are talking, you're like, oh, you're almost ready.
Yeah. That first,
so that's the
first bubbling of woos. You hear one guy go woo and the second guy, and then everyone's like, oh, shit's about to happen. And you hear that rumbling, and man, it's weird. Yeah. It's fight or flight at that moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a crazy feeling. But yeah,
for a beginner listening to this, what advice do you have for playing, I guess, live and for playing big shows? I think people tend to forget that, I think you've probably been doing it a while, that you don't get as nervous. I think the nervousness never goes away. You're always going to have some nervousness. But I think for a beginner, for the first time going up, it's got to be nerve-wracking. Do you have any advice for that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, luckily for me, I started very young. And it's one of those things where, if you can practice a lot, that'll help out. For me, when I started, I was probably 14, 15 years old when I played, like, I wouldn't say an actual event, but I played this small little club in this little downtown, in my town that I lived in. And, which is kind of crazy because it wasn't a full on bar. But for me, I didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't actually DJing. I basically pressed play on my computer and just let my songs go through. And, that would have been 2013 or so. And, for me, I was already nervous and I wasn't doing anything. Like, and obviously it's nerve wracking, but I think if you actually can perform or DJ or whatever you do, even if you're playing keyboard or whatever, just, obviously having a lot of practice ahead of time, you definitely, it does take a lot to get over that nervousness. And, it's the same for a lot of people. For me, it took me quite a while. I think it took me maybe a year and a half, from random shows I played. But yeah, I mean, I guess it just comes with time, primarily just getting used to it and practicing a lot. For me, DJing is a lot easier now. Before I used to try and mess with MIDI controllers and trying to, manipulate sounds and trying to take, MIDI files and doing them that way and kind of using like a launch pad setup and playing different synths that way. And to me, that had too much risk behind it because, obviously if you missed on the timing or if you pressed the wrong synth at the wrong time, that would have actually messed up quite a bit.
Your screensaver turns on.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of different things for me in that case that would have caused issues. But when it comes to DJing, for me, it's a lot easier and a lot safer, I guess. There's really not, I feel like for a lot of people, there's not a lot of mess ups you'll find with DJing, especially now with the new equipment that they're coming out with. It's not like, years ago where, I don't know, you had to definitely piece things together. You can buy your own, controller and everything's all together and the software's together, so it's, definitely different now, but I don't know. I guess, like I said, just taking the time. I mean, to be honest, for me, like having a few drinks helped me out a little bit, just to
not too many, not too many.
Right. Not too many, but just for me, that's just the thing. But, yeah, I mean, just making sure you practice a lot, make sure you know the equipment. It's different when you're not familiar with different types of controllers, because there's been a few scenarios where I just show up and there's new equipment or new type of like CDJs that I haven't used.
Yeah.
And that can be a little tricky. So I guess just being well-rounded with equipment in general, especially DJing, but that's all based on the type of music you play or what you're performing. But yeah, it's definitely a tricky thing. Just takes time too. So.
There's something that you mentioned that I'm kind of interested in, and it also sort of plays into another question I wanted to ask you. You said you have no management and you have no booking agent. And I'm surprised to hear that, because I see a lot of bass music producers now getting managers and booking agents. And I'm curious. The question I wanted to ask you was if you could talk about promotion online, but now I kind of want to put it in this whole thing of just how do you represent yourself online, and how do you represent yourself as an artist and become successful doing that without the help of, third parties? Yeah.
And actually too, I just recently got a manager too, just, so I like literally last month I got a manager, but up until then, I definitely been doing everything on my own. For me, the easiest thing was to make a lot of music friends. I think that really helped out in kind of forming a community of musicians. I guess the earliest thing for me, like, when Skype was big, obviously before Discord, I was on Skype all the time, and especially through SoundCloud, I met a lot of musicians that were starting out with me. We all were at the same amount of followers, you know, and just kind of like, oh, cool. Like, let's just kind of get in a group. And actually one of them just added a whole bunch of us into a Skype call and just was like, all right, we're going to be friends now. We're going to start making music together or whatever. It's like just all of a sudden. But to me, that really helped me out because I guess having friends like that can help. You guys can either help support each other on, you know, your releases. You can also help with giving, you know, feedback on your songs, you know, on either mixing or whatever, you know, depending on what level you are at. But it's, to me, that was really important because I don't think I'd be where I am now if it weren't for that. And it's neat too, because there's a lot of people that are successful now that I kind of went up with. A few people, just to name a few, is like people like Chuck Sutton. There's Laxity, Valentine. And there's this person from, Ottawa, I believe. He's, his name's Maxime, and he started out just around the same time as me. So there's a lot of people that we just kind of help support each other. And I guess having that sort of, you know, friend group to talk to really helps out. You know, and the biggest thing too is when it came to, you know, releasing new music, at least for me, you know, I didn't feel uncomfortable to send it to them and say, hey, you know, would you mind reposting this if you like it? Or maybe, you know, and if they release it as their song, you know, I'd try and repost and just kind of share it that way and just, you know, have like a little partnership going on, just, you know, just to help lift each other up. And honestly, I feel like that really worked for me because I guess there started to become a pattern to where now when you look on my Spotify, those same people actually show up on Related, which is crazy. Like I think if you look on my Spotify, they'll say artists similar to Jkuch, and it'll show Laxity and Maxime, and there'll be a few people on there, and it's neat. I mean, I never expected that to happen, but I think because people almost knew we associated with each other, they were drawn all of us. And, I think that's really important. And we don't necessarily make the same genres of music, especially now. I mean, we've all split up and kind of are doing our own thing, but I feel like a lot of people still can associate with us kind of being together. So that's always helped me out. And having those friend groups also helped make connections in the future, for events as well. I ended up getting playing South by Southwest in Austin, Texas in 2018 with a whole bunch of music friends. And also getting, you know, different record label deals, I guess, or smaller record label deals through friends, that we're associated with. And, you know, just things like that just to me have helped out, and just sort of those connections really helped, spiral me up to kind of where I am right now.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I think for anyone starting out, you have to network. You just have to, and it doesn't have to be grimy or whatever. It's more of an alliance, you know. You aren't making friends just to use them or whatever. You're making friends so you can get better, and they teach you things, and you teach them things, and you support each other, and the rising tide raises all ships, you know. It's funny because in the electronic genre, you see this so much cooperation, and in other scenes, you kind of see, you know, oh, this guy's girlfriend is fucking this guy and blah, blah, blah. And there's so much hate and there's drama in every genre, but there's something about, well, I'll give you an example with this COVID-19 stuff that's going on right now. Some of the complaints that I hear most from the people I'm interviewing is that when you play live, you meet a lot of new people and you're networking, you know, and you meet new people and there's connections, and that's sort of been taken away from us since we can't play live anymore. But if you look at the bass music scene, I don't think you guys are missing a step. You have your Discords, you have your Facebook groups, and it seems like you guys are thriving just as much as you would offline. Is that true?
Yeah, I definitely would say so. You know, it's obviously still good to go to shows and meet up with people. But for me, I had such a hard time getting shows for a really long time. So yes, online was really the only way for me to make connections with people. And just, you know, even if it wasn't music related, like we play video games together, whatever. those sort of things I think are pretty important. And like you said, it's definitely helps, lift you up at least. And seeing other people in a way too, if you could, if you're friends with them, it's good to see them succeed as well. And, that almost motivates you to catch up. And I wouldn't say necessarily full on competition, but it's friendly competition's good too. Especially if you're close in genre or you're similar in styles or whatever, you want to kind of join up with them. And, if they can do certain sounds and you're like, I want to know how they do that. And, that's kind of how I feel now. And I always feel that way. Not that I want to replicate them, but I want to, I guess, one up them, again, in a friendly way, not, trying to be a jerk. Cause I'm, for, an example too, this musician named More Kismet, they're, I think, 15 years old. I'm like, how is that possible? And they're extremely talented. And, I'm like, I need to make sure that I'm, on my game, and I make sure I'm, caught up on everything, make sure my sound design's really good. So
these young whippersnappers are going to take your place.
Exactly. Yeah. So those sort of things, I'm just like, I can't rest. I got to make sure I'm caught up and see, what they're doing differently or whatever. So, that can really help you out to make sure you're on top of things. And for me, I guess, I guess that should be the same for a lot of people, just, keeping up with people and seeing what they're doing. So, yeah. Just the competitiveness helps out a little bit. Just not too much.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to be toxic. You mentioned playing video games. I've noticed, this is a theme with a lot of bass music producers. They seem to really like Warzone. What are you guys playing, and how much does video games kind of spill over into your own art? Do you find that, okay, sure, you had Deadmau5 as an influence, but what about like the Ocarina of Time soundtrack or any video game soundtrack? Do you find yourself getting influenced by that as well?
Yeah, and honestly, as far as playing video games now, like there's not really anyone I'm playing games with nowadays. I mean, years ago I used to play like Minecraft and a few indie games with a few people, like my friend who owns Surreal Recordings and a few other musicians. We used to just play Minecraft or whatever, just get on a call and just play games or whatever. But for me, definitely, I mean, video games have inspired my music quite a bit, and that's probably relevant if you can hear a lot of the sounds that I use, and sort of the sound design style that I have it does sound a lot like video game setup. So, for me, a lot of early 2000s video games, maybe for like the PlayStation 2 or a lot of those older platformer games, are definitely huge inspiration. And the way they did the sound design too for the sound effects to me is also inspiring. I really like that. It's not necessarily 8-bit, but just the synthetic, I mean, everything was done almost with synthesizers, I'm pretty sure, when it came to sound design. Obviously, just the basic analog stuff. And that sort of stuff inspired me like crazy. And the thing I like about it, maybe that's another thing that kind of ties into my sound design now, is it was fairly simple. A lot of the sound design is simple. It's just, they're simple sounds, but what they do to them, or even their post-processing or whatever they did to, like delays especially, they used a lot. I know that's a big thing they use.
A lot of sound fonts too. A lot of video game music back in the day was a ton of sound fonts.
So that's exactly the same mindset I have now, and that's actually, that routes back to, the violin setup. I'm almost fine with it not sounding perfectly, or, completely real. Yeah. I'm okay with it being, synthetic sounding, because that, I guess I want it to almost sound like a video game soundtrack. And that's how a lot of my releases go. It's almost like a new level in like a platformer game. It's like you have to almost close your eyes and be like, okay, what is this level going to be? And like you were saying, I know you listened to The Cave. That's the same sort of mindset I had. It's like, well, this is, this would be cool if this is what the world was like, or the level was like. So yeah, definitely video games have inspired me quite a bit. So, yeah.
Let's talk about, we're getting towards the end of the interview. Thank you so much for your time, Joshua. I totally appreciate it.
No problem.
I just want to touch on, you're talking about monetizing music, I guess, in the COVID era. That's something I want to ask you about. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think artists can do in this streaming era to sort of, I guess, make a living off of it? So many of us have been impacted by, either our real life jobs have been canceled, or, a big revenue stream playing live has been taken away. How are you navigating through this?
It's extremely difficult. I'm very fortunate right now that I have family and a few different things. I'm extremely grateful for that. To be honest, if it comes to music, it's not something I could do full time as of right now. I think it's still going to be a while, even at the following that I'm at right now. But I am thinking of new ways. I did have a time where I was off of work. I was furloughed for a while, but fortunately I was still getting paid for that. Even staying home and not working, I was still getting paid for a while, which is
dope.
Very, very helpful. Right. Yeah. Definitely not something that you'll see in a lot of companies, but luckily I was. For me though, that also gave me time to think about what I could do for music to make money, because I never really put that thought into it. And unfortunately, there are a lot of streaming sites that don't pay that well unless you get a lot of plays.
Spotify.
Right. Exactly. Spotify, even Apple Music. And for me, those songs that I have that do have a lot of plays, they're really a lucky chance, because I've tried to replicate that too. And you can't really guarantee they're going to get a lot of plays, because there's a lot of things like playlists. They got to really pick it up and they got to really like it. And even if it's a great song, sometimes they're just not going to pick it up for some reason. And I tried so many times to almost replicate that, just to see if there's a way I can get a constant, income from that. But it is very off, just because the way things are, I guess, as far as the scene goes. But from what I found is now I'm trying to do things on the side with that. Anything I can almost do to make an income with what I have. I guess for me, the convenience is I know majority of my fan base are actually producers themselves. A lot of people don't necessarily say that, but I think because of the creativity of my songs, I happen to have a lot of producers that are interested in the songs.
Yeah.
And I guess that might be the same for a lot of EDM in general. But for me, what I'm trying to do recently is, I want to start a Patreon. There's a few things I'm doing as well where I'm teaching music production and trying to, get paid for that, offer either an hour or 2 hour session for, however much money. And then also on the side, I started selling merchandise, trying to get that working and almost think of it as a business, and trying to find different outlets or different ways I can pull in money, and as well as making the, stream revenue or, through my distribution, through Spotify and whatever revenue I can get through that too. So there's a few different things I'm trying to get into. And obviously, since we're not playing shows anymore, that's a big chunk that's taken out. And not that I was playing a lot of shows anyways, but for a lot of people, that's a big piece of the income. So I guess for me, I'm trying to think of new ways to make money. And I think my biggest thing now, because I know I have a lot of dedicated fans, and this is probably a thing a lot of people can think about too, is you don't necessarily need a lot of fans. You just need even a small amount of really dedicated fans.
Totally.
And
totally.
And even with them, if they could be, even interested in even donating like $4 a month to your Patreon, say, hey, I'm making music. This would help me out if you'd like to donate, helps me, gets me a coffee and, whatever. It just, those simple things like that. And, you donating is going to help me continue to make the music that you enjoy and whatever. And, you can also set up different tiers. So what I'm planning on doing, and this isn't fully out yet, but what I plan on doing is when I set up my Patreon, I want to set up different tiers to where that music production side of things is implemented into it too. So, maybe $4 a month is just the basic, if you're a good fan of mine, just donate that. And that really just helps me out. And then $10 a month you could do where I actually will give you sound effects that I make, like sample packs. I will actually send them to you for being a patron, and have you join in on a Discord. I'm going to end up making a Discord chat to where people can join in and almost have a, I guess, membership with that, right? But I want to make it to where it's worth it, obviously, you know, not just for me to make music, but this way they can get sounds out of it, different sounds that I make, I can send to them and be like, here, you can go ahead and use this in your song, or drum sounds or whatever, you know, different samples that they can use and implement in their own songs. And because I know I have a lot of producer fans, I think that would be really beneficial, because for me, I've had a lot of people asking for YouTube tutorials. They want to know how I make certain sounds. So I think that'd be a perfect way for me to make income and still offer what they want. On the side, you know, moving up to like another tier, I was thinking doing, you know, maybe $50 tier a month, to where that would give them an hour a month with me. And that would actually space it out enough to where even if I had a lot of people interested in that, which I've definitely been seeing even lately, and I haven't made it fully public yet, but even just from what I've seen, I have a few people I'm already kind of teaching on the side. I feel like if I can implement that into Patreon and make it almost like a membership sort of setup, to where even an hour a month, I'm breaking down whatever you want to learn. When it comes down to a particular song, you want to know how I do a certain sound effect or a certain sound design in general, I'm completely fine with going over that. So for me, I guess I'm at that point to where I'm extremely grateful I have the fans that I have, and they just so happen to be producers. And if there's a way that I can help them out, but they can help me continue to do what I'm doing, that would be great. So, and eventually I'd love to see it go full time, because of course everyone would love to do music full time. For me, I think that's just kind of the pocket I'm sitting in now. Whereas I think other people, especially on the type of music they make, you know, they may not have fans that are all producers. You know, they may just have the average listener. So, you know, I guess setting up things like Bandcamp, offering to where if they want to buy the songs, or obviously streaming, you know, is the big thing too. So I guess just trying to find a bunch of outlets to pull in income is the easiest way. So it's definitely not easy though. So
yeah, it's important to know who your user base is, I guess, for lack of a better term, you know. Mm-hmm. And when you try to monetize things, I think it's hard to forget that you only have so much time in a day, and it's easy to get distracted on things that your fans don't really care about. And if people are interacting with you and paying for courses or whatever, then you sort of can navigate yourself as an artist towards what's providing the most value for people. And if people are giving you money, then that's a good indication that, you know, you're providing value, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, because you never know. Maybe you'll just go full-time teaching, right?
And that's what I'd love to do, honestly, if I can make that happen. But to me, at least for where I am now, it seems like I'm getting a good feeling that that's where it's going to end up going, just especially with who I've been teaching lately and what I've been seeing. I'm kind of in testing phase right now, but once I get that implemented, I think that'll really help out. So yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. I mean, I've been doing this for about 7 years now. And, you know, to be honest, I never really thought about the money side of things, because I've always, you know, obviously been going to school and working and stuff. So just trying to, you know, focus on that. But now, since I'm building a bigger following, I think I really should look into like how I can make money off of this. So, yeah. I think this year is like the first time I really started sitting down and planning, and especially this year, the first time I introduced merchandise. I've never had merch out before. So this has already been helping out quite a bit with that. So yeah.
And you could start hiring employees.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about your new album and what's coming out for 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, actually for I guess the rest of 2020, as of now I don't really have any releases planned. Unfortunately, I've kind of finished up the year with my releases with the label Subsidia. These are my last 2 songs, and I think for the rest of the year, what I'm going to do is making a sample pack. And I'm going to offer sound effects and drums and all sorts of stuff. Probably going to be releasing that in December sometime when I get that finished up. And I think that'll be a great thing for a lot of people to get. You know, I've also had a lot of people asking for sample packs for me. So I think that'll be hopefully very popular. We'll see what happens with that. And on the other hand, right now, and another reason why I don't have any other releases lined up is because I am working on an album. I'm hoping to get that out by 2021. I'll have to see. This is the first full-length album I'm planning on working on, and it's definitely a different type of album, or different type of genre setup than what I'm used to. This is going to be, I guess, very pop oriented. It's very, a lot of my vocals are going to be on it. And this is definitely a learning curve for me because, I've been doing vocals for a while too on most of my songs, especially recently. But this album is going to be very personal. It's going to have still, I'm still going to keep the complex sound design and, the intricacies of what I already do. But I want to somehow kind of mesh that in with, like an indie rock feeling or pop feeling. And again, this is just me testing new waters. And this is something I've always done. Like I was saying, even years ago, just trying different genres from house to dubstep to whatever. This is just another sort of step that I'm going into because like, who knows, once I finish this album up, I'm probably going to go back to like doing dubstep because I still love doing crazy stuff. So never want people to be like, oh, he's selling out or he's like simplifying, right? Because, the stuff I've made has always been very complicated sounding. But I think for this step that I'm taking, at least with the album, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily sacrificing the detail, but there's probably going to have to be certain pockets I'll have to fill for that where it's, some parts aren't going to be as detailed as others, especially for the vocals to sit in. So I'll just have to see how that goes. So far, it's been going great. I'm really just in the starting phases of the album, but this is probably going to be the biggest project I've had. And as far as even working on the songs, this will be the longest time I've spent on some of these songs, like ever. I usually, when it comes to music in general, it takes me about a month to finish a song, especially if it's an instrumental one. But with these songs, because they're personal and, it's my voice especially on them, takes me a lot longer and it takes a lot more criticizing and trying to adjust things and mixing and making sure it sounds perfect, at least to me. So this might take quite a while, but I know it's going to be worth it when it comes out. And because I got this new manager and everything, we've got a lot of plans for this as far as promotion goes. We're going to look into new ways on marketing it and things I've never done before and maybe I've not been comfortable with before. For example, we might be doing like music videos for them in the future.
Oh, cool.
All sorts of different promo techniques and, just to see how it goes and, just to kind of put it out in the world and then hopefully from there, just kind of learn from that and then move on, and that's kind of how I've always been. But yeah, I think those will be really nice when they all come out. We'll just have to see how they go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joshua. Could you tell us where we could find you? What are your socials?
Absolutely. You could find me on Twitter, Facebook, anywhere really. You could just type in Jkuch, Jkuch. I almost will always pull up on there. Even if you go on Google, you'll find me right on there. Primarily on Spotify and SoundCloud. But yes, absolutely. If you also want to see like more updates on what I'm doing, I am very active on Instagram. So on there, I'm just Jkuch Music. And, that's where you'll probably get everything from me. So a lot of cool stuff on there too. I'll have every now and then put some cool stuff on my stories and stuff.
Excellent. We'll put all your links in our show notes, so that the listeners can go check you out.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Joshua. I totally appreciate it. Is there anything you want to say before we go?
No, that I definitely went over actually everything. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
So
I totally appreciate it. You're a very interesting guy.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.
That was another episode of the Bassfug Podcast. Totally appreciate that you're listening to this. Hope you're checking out the other ones. You don't want to miss any of the juicy information and cool stories that our guests seem to bring to the table. I'm serious, though. We have some of the best guests. I don't know how I get them, but you're going to want to go check those out. Make sure you're subscribed, because you'll miss all these great stories and music production tips. Check us out at www.bassfug.com. There's links to all of our social media, where the podcast is located, Apple Music, Spotify, you name it. Just go to www.bassfug.com. And thanks for everybody who's been liking and subscribing and commenting so far. It really means a lot. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
This program was brought to you by the superwill64.com Entertainment Network. For more great shows, podcasts, and music, please visit superwill64.com.